Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. A hard palm hit my back as I reached the top step. I pitched forward, arms flailing for anything that held. My shoulder smashed the rail, breath punched out fast. Behind me, a soft laugh barely covered by humming. I'm Mara, 28. I was 6 breaths from falling. My stomach tightened like a fist around the baby. I planted both feet, knees shaking, vision pin sharp. One more nudge and we were gone. She drifted closer, hands folded like a choir girl. Careful, she murmured, eyes dry, smile tidy. Her toe tapped the polished edge, testing the slide. I kept my palm glued to the rail. Accidents happen, she brushed imaginary dust off my sleeve. Her perfume scraped at my throat, decision forcing clarity. I straightened, still facing the drop, not blinking. Try again, I said low and watched her blink. Her gaze flicked to the staircase, then to my shoes. The step shined wet, a thin gleam that stole grip. I shifted weight, soul skated a fraction, heart slammed. She wanted physics to finish what she started. I crouched, touched the edge, fingertips slick and cold. She clicked her tongue, a tiny scold, a quiet dare. Let me help, she whispered, fingers hovering near my elbow. I pulled back, heat rising like a warning flare. I took out my phone, camera up, record live. Her smile twitched, a hairline crack across porcelain calm. Why film me, she asked, voice small, hands still. So we remember the truth when it shakes, I said. She stepped sideways, blocking the hallway like a gate. Weddings exhaust people, she tried, gaze skimming my belly. We can pause for everyone's health, her lashes fluttered. We are healthy, I answered, hand steady on proof. My screen caught a detail she missed on her nerves. A folded rag tucked behind the baseboard, still damp. I jabbed it with my shoe, she flinched an inch. That inch told me more than any speech. Move, I said, and kept the lens steady. Her jaw tightened, a small tick, a practiced habit. She lifted the rag, then hid it behind her back. The move made the camera sing. I texted him with my free hand, 3 words. Your mom shoved me, urgent, come now. Read receipts blinked, typing bubble rose, then died. Silence from him, louder than any alarm. She paced once, heel tapping a clipped rhythm. Stress does strange things, she offered, smile repaired. To memory, to balance, to judgment, her eyes dared me. My balance returned, I said, and didn't look away. I took 1 step down, testing the treacherous edge. The sole slid just enough to prove the trap. I lifted the phone to catch the shimmer and rag. Documentation, I said, and her breath hitched. A key scraped the front lock, metal on metal. He burst in, jacket half on, eyes moving fast. What happened? His voice sharp, body filling the hall. She exhaled like rescue finally arrived. I pointed at the step, then at her damp rag. His stare followed, confusion first, then something darker. Tell me, he said, looking at me, not her. I held the rail because gravity loves denial. She pushed, I answered, keeping my tone even. Twice I added and showed the wet edge. He reached out, fingers skidding on the polished sheen. A beat passed long enough to choose sides. She sighed, soft, almost tender, the tone of lullabies. We all make mistakes, she murmured, eyes on him. One hand curved over her heart, pure performance. His shoulders dropped and my stomach turned. I lifted the phone higher, clip still recording. Watch from the start, I said, thumb ready. Her face flashed something raw, then iron closed again. No one moved and the stares waited like teeth. He glanced at the door, then at my belly. His throat worked, a dry swallow, a stalled decision. Play it, he breathed, not looking at her. I pressed the screen and the house went quiet. I hit play and the hallway filled with our breaths. The shove landed on screen like a verdict no one wanted. My body pitched forward in the clip and caught at the banister. Her fingers hovered behind me, open like a trap. He watched without blinking while the sound popped and hissed. The glossy stare nosing flashed, then my shoe slid an inch. She reached for the frame on the wall and pretended to fuss. The recording stopped on her smile like a mask about to crack. He reached for the phone and then stopped midair. His gaze swung between me and the frozen image. Play it again, his jaw worked while he held the railing. I restarted and counted heartbeats until his shoulders squared. She moved closer and curved an arm around his. Stress twists memories, her voice tried to soothe and steer. I stepped between them and lifted the screen higher. The second push showed clear and ugly and timed. He exhaled through his nose and asked for the cloth. She tucked it deeper behind the trim with a tiny flick. Leave it, I opened my bag and pulled out a zip pouch. Evidence, I held his stare until he nodded once. She laughed soft. Lion reached toward my hand. Her nails hovered above the pouch like small knives. I kept my arm straight and snapped the pouch shut. He angled his body and blocked her with one step. My thumb fired a text to a friend on duty. Need an officer now, threat to pregnancy recorded. She tried to peek at the screen and I turned away. He swallowed hard and watched the front door like prey. We waited and the house clicked and settled around us. She paced a narrow line and tapped her wrist where nothing sat. Let's be adults, her tone went sweet then cool then sweet. I counted those switches like tells in a rigged game. Footsteps outside, a sharp knock, a uniform filled the entry. I raised my hand and held the pouch like a flag. Video on my phone, my voice came out level and steady. He stood beside me with his spine tall at last. The officer viewed the clip 3 times without a word. Her mouth tightened at the pause before the shove. She asked for the cloth and I handed it over. My future moved with that small transfer. His mother rested against the newel post and blinked slowly. You're overreacting, she shaped her mouth around the syllables. The officer listed options and asked about medical care. I nodded because the baby's safety owned the room. He finally looked his mother in the face. I saw the push, his hands curled then uncurled on reflex. Her eyes went cold enough to sting skin. She pivoted toward the officer with a practiced sigh. I'll need your statement, the officer's pen hovered in space. I kept it short and focused on movements, no guesses. He added his own words and did not look away. Her version landed last and sounded rehearsed and neat. The officer bagged the cloth and marked it twice. She asked if we felt safe staying in the house. I stared at the stare and felt my ribs tighten. No, the answer cleared the air like thunder. He unlocked the guest room and pointed at a suitcase. Pack essentials, his face had that new set to it. I took only what I could lift without strain. She watched from the hall and mouthed a single ugly promise. We stepped outside while the cruiser idled at the curb. He locked the door and kept the keys in his fist. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Walk carefully, people stumble, I saved it for later teeth. In the car he gripped the wheel and did not start. I believed her longer than I believed myself, his voice shook. I touched his wrist and felt the tremor run through. We're going to the clinic first, the decision anchored everything. He nodded and pulled onto the street with a slow turn. In the mirror I saw the house shrink and harden behind us. Something in me shifted from pleading to planning. I was done hoping she would choose mercy. The clinic door slid open and a nurse waved us through. I pressed the check-in tablet with steady fingers and shallow breaths. He sat close but stared at the floor like it could answer. I kept one hand on my belly and counted seconds until triage. A cuff squeezed my arm and numbers blinked on the screen. Vitals stable, the nurse jotted quick notes and met my eyes once. She guided us to a small room and rolled in the monitor. I watched his shoulders rise and fall like a slow pump. Gel hit skin and the probe pressed down with careful pressure. The rhythm came strong through the speaker and filled the space. I let out air I didn't know I still held. The nurse nodded and printed 2 strips for the file. Any recent falls or conflict, she asked, eyes sharp not nosy. I looked at him and he nodded for me to speak. Assault at home, I answered, voice even enough to write down. She underlined a section and handed me a card for support. She stepped out to fetch the doctor and closed the door. He scrubbed his face with both palms and finally looked up. I froze back there, he said, words tasting like metal. We're not going back, I answered and watched the truth land. The doctor came in quick and focused on results. Heartbeat solid, placenta good, stress manageable with rest. File a police report today, she added without changing tone. I nodded because action steadies me more than comfort. At discharge, the nurse leaned in with a private question. Safe address for follow-up calls, she asked, pen ready to move. New location tonight, I said and watched her write temporary. She paused, then offered a security pamphlet folded tight. Outside, the air felt cooler and my legs steadied. He unlocked the car and left the door open like a truce. I'm calling a locksmith and my therapist, he said. Call a lawyer first, I answered because timing is armor. My phone buzzed before the engine turned over. Unknown number again, same clip tone as before. You won't marry into chaos, walk away. I screenshotted, then forwarded to the officer's direct line. We drove to the precinct and walked in side by side. The desk sergeant glanced up and recognized. The case number. Interview room 3, she pushed a clipboard forward and waited. I signed the statement and slid the phone across. A detective joined with careful questions and minimal patience. He watched the clip, then the photo of the slick step. He bagged my copied printout from the clinic and added notes. Emergency protective order is available, he said, measured and direct. We chose yes and filled the request with steady ink. He ran the form to the judge on duty 2 doors down. 10 minutes later, he came back with stamped papers. My hand shook once, then went still around the envelope. He studied the order and exhaled like he'd been underwater. I will secure my accounts in the locks today. Also the guest list and vendor access, I added without smiling. He winced because he knew exactly what that meant. We left the station and parked in a grocery lot. I opened a shared calendar and changed 3 entries to TBD. He opened his banking app and froze at a transfer. Authorization from a device not in his pocket. He dialed the bank and put it on speaker. Freeze the joint card, he requested with clipped words. The agent confirmed flags and promised an internal review. We ended the call and sat with the quiet. I need to tell her she's blocked, he whispered, rubbing his thumb. You need to tell her nothing, I answered, sharper than planned. He stared through the windshield and drummed 2 fingers slow. Right, he whispered and placed the phone face down. We drove to a hardware store and bought nothing fancy. He chose a temporary bar for the door and a wedge alarm. I set both in the trunk because tools beat speeches. We were not waiting for permission to feel safe. Back at the rental, we unpacked in 10 measured minutes. I placed the clinic printout in a folder beside the order. He scanned each page and memorized the judge's signature. Then his screen lit up with a contact name he feared. Her number flashed again and then switched to private. He let it ring until it died on its own. A new text arrived from an unknown with a short video. Old family photos scrolled past with my face spliced in. I leaned closer and found the edit line at my jaw. Smear attempt, I said, and forwarded the file to the detective. He rubbed his temples and blew out a shaky breath. We can't outrun lies, he murmured, and he was right. We pivoted to offense because defense only burns energy. I drafted a clean email to the venue with 2 sentences. Safety incident at a family home, counsel involved. Hold the date and direct all contact to me only. He handled the florist while I called the efficient. Short updates, no drama, requests for confirmation receipts. Every reply locked another door in my mind. Control returned in small clicks that sounded like progress. The detective texted back 15 minutes later with a plan. Preserve the smear video and expect more pressure by night. He requested our devices for a quick clone tomorrow. We agreed because evidence prevents gaslighting from gaining ground. Our dinner was quiet and quick and mostly uneaten. He reached across the table and rested his hand open. I want to earn trust without you carrying me. Then stand next to me in court, I answered, not unkind. Before sleep, I placed the order beside the bed. My bag stayed packed and shoes sat ready by the door. I set 2 alarms and checked the chain twice. Prepared is not paranoid when someone wants you off balance. I lay awake and listened for the smallest noise. My phone stayed face up with the camera a tap away. He turned once and whispered that he would not break. I believed him enough for tonight, not for forever. Just before dawn, another message hit the lock screen. New number again, same cadence, same ice. You can still keep the baby if you bow out. I stared at those words and felt something harden to steel. The door sensor chirped twice, then went dead mid-beep. I checked the peephole and saw a parcel on the mat. No return label, only my first name written in block letters. I slid the chain, nudged it inside, then called the detective. Leave it sealed, her voice was flat through the speaker. Units nearby can collect within 20 minutes. I set it on the floor and stepped back from the edge. My heart steadied as I pictured gloves and evidence bags. His phone lit up with a frantic vendor message. Appointment moved, bride confirmed, signature on cancellation. He looked at me like the ground shifted under his shoes. Who signed my name, he asked, and we both already knew. We drove to the boutique because I needed eyes on paper. A clipboard waited with a neat line through our date. Rescinded by family representative, the manager read with caution. I handed over the order and filmed her reaction on purpose. Understood, the manager said, shoulders pulled back against pressure. All actions reversed until counsel clears this. She photocopied the forged line while avoiding headlines. I saved the scan and felt the case building brick by brick. Outside, a sedan idled across the street with windows cracked. I recognized the personalized plate without wanting to. He froze, then unclenched, then took out his phone. "Do not approach," I said, because the order writes the rules. We walked into the grocery next door and waited by the registers. The car eased forward and then disappeared around the block. He rubbed his jaw like it ached from clenching too long. "We need distance from everything she touches," he muttered, finally clear. At noon, the detective met us at the rental. She lifted the parcel with tongs and tilted it gently. A small camera lens stared up from a corner seam. "Dropbox for tech tomorrow," she said, and labeled it fast. My phone pinged with a new group chat invite. His extended family filled the screen with polite alarms. "Call your mother, she's not herself." I left it unread and forwarded the invite to our file. He typed into the family thread with 2 careful lines. "No contact outside counsel, all updates through me." He hovered, then hit send and leaned back like he jumped. 3 typing bubbles bloomed and vanished without answers. Mid-afternoon, a florist email landed with a refund receipt. Cardholder matched her initials and a device near her address. He stiffened and dialed the bank with a clipped voice. Fraud team escalated and locked every compromised profile. We took a breath and walked to the precinct annex. The detective cloned our phones and slid them back. Preliminary scan shows a stalking app tied to a shared ID. His mouth opened, then shut, rage caught behind his teeth. On the way home, a cyclist flagged us down at a light. "Are you the couple from that edited video?" he asked. He pointed at his screen where my face had been altered again. I memorized the channel name and logged it for takedown. Evening brought a knock that rattled the frame. A process server stood with a neat stack of papers. Civil notice for defamation and interference with family relations. I flipped through until I found her signature in heavy ink. "Good," I said, and he stared like I'd sworn. "Discovery works both ways," I could feel my spine lock. He nodded once, understanding the lane we were in. We set the packet beside the order and cleared the table. I called a lawyer whose number the detective had slid earlier. She answered on the second ring and spoke like a metronome. "Triage tonight, filings in the morning, hearing by week's end." I agreed because speed cuts confusion before it spreads. While we prepared exhibits, a cousin pinged me privately. "She pulled tricks like this on his ex," the message read. "Different tools, same pattern, protect yourself." I asked for copies and got 3 screenshots within minutes. We printed the screenshots and clipped them to our stack. He watched the pages grow with a mix of grief and relief. "I wanted a different origin story for us," he said quietly. "We build the right one now," I answered and meant it. Just after 9, the boutique manager called back with updates. "Your mother-in-law attempted to collect cash in person. Security asked her to leave and documented her remarks. We requested the footage and she promised to drive by tomorrow." A final message arrived from a masked number at 10. "If you love him, disappear before you ruin his life." No threat words, only pressure wrapped in fake concern. I flagged it, saved it, and drew a line under the day. We slid the new door bar into place and tested twice. He put his phone in a metal box the detective provided. The house fell silent except for traffic like distant surf. I lay there and counted breaths until the baby kicked back. Right before sleep, the motion camera buzzed on the app. A silhouette hovered at the curb and checked the mailbox. They left a card with a single printed sentence. "Tell him to pick a side before it picks him." A pounding knock jolted me before the alarm buzzed. "Welfare check," a uniform called through the door. Anonymous tip about a pregnant woman in distress. I held up the court papers and pointed at the name on them. The officer scanned the order and clicked his radio once. "Caller blocked by the order," he noted for the record. He asked if anyone else had access to the building. "Not without breaking something," I answered and meant every word. A horn blared outside like a dare thrown at the street. We stepped out and found our car flashing without reason. I crouched and spotted a magnetized disc tucked near the axle. He fetched gloves while I filmed the removal for the file. The tech unit arrived fast and bagged the tracker with a tag. "Real-time uplink to a shared account," the lead announced. He didn't need to say which account would surface. My pulse steadied because proof cuts through fog like a blade. By 10, we were in a courthouse hallway with strangers watching. Opposing counsel approached with a careful smile that didn't reach anything. "Mutual no contact to de-escalate," she floated like it was generous. "Our order stands," I answered and kept my hands from shaking. Inside, the judge flipped through pages without looking up. He testified first and kept his voice clear and measured. I followed with the clip, then the texts, then the tracker. The judge's pen paused only when the wellness check came up. Temporary stay away extended, the judge ruled without ceremony. Surrender electronics for imaging by noon tomorrow. A bailiff handed over instructions while eyes burned holes in my back. Across the aisle, her mouth shaped disappointment and then something meaner. We left the room into a wall of relatives holding phones. Smile for the family update, one cousin chirped too brightly. He stepped in front of me and kept walking without a word. My screen lit with a note from the analyst about the parcel. Hidden camera confirmed with live audio relay registered to her cloud. Chain of custody sealed and timestamped for hearing 2. I exhaled once and felt my shoulders drop one notch. Then the bank pinged with an alert that tightened everything again. A new card application appeared in my name at a branch. We froze my credit and pushed an identity theft report. He locked his profiles with a passphrase only we knew. I added the case number to the running index on my phone. The landlord called next with a brittle tone that sounded rehearsed. A notarized letter requested termination of our lease immediately. I drove over with the order and a copy of the judge's stamp. The clerk compared signatures and ripped the fake while recording herself. He patched through our attorney and set a three-way call. Future contact routed only through counsel, the lawyer repeated slowly. His mother dialed his cell anyway and left a message spitting threats. Violation logged with time and file number for the next round. We took the car to a shop because of a new rattle. The mechanic rolled out pale and holding 2 loose lug nuts. Someone backed these off, he muttered and snapped. A picture. I texted the photo to the detective and waited for instructions. Do not drive it came back fast with siren emojis. A tow arrived and hauled our evidence straight to storage. We booked a rideshare to a hotel under a fresh alias. At check-in, he slid me the key card like a promise. Night carried a different kind of quiet that felt temporary. A file dropped into my inbox with a doctored ultrasound. The image claimed non-viable in bold font and cruel spacing. I opened the clinic portal and saw our real numbers holding steady. He stared at the fake until his jaw shifted hard. We answer nothing emotional by text, I reminded him softly. He nodded and set the phone face down on the desk. Boundaries keep the baby and me out of her theater. Near midnight, the camera app flashed with movement at the old porch. A figure checked the mailbox and then tested the door handle. Patrol cars rolled up fast on the live feed with lights. My phone buzzed again as a voicemail dropped with 4 words. Choose him or disappear by sunrise. I replayed the voicemail and hit forward to our lawyer. Time stamped and saved, I texted, fingers steady on purpose. He watched the screen and nodded once without looking up. Sunrise sounded like a deadline she wanted to own. We called the precinct and requested a wellness patrol on her. Document this contact as a violation, I added with care. The dispatcher confirmed entry and logged the threat line verbatim. I felt the baby roll like a small warning drum. He paced the hotel rug and checked the door twice. I'm done reacting, he said, voice sharpened by choice. Then choose the next move, I answered, because stalling feeds predators. He stopped pacing and reached for the phone like it burned. He dialed her on speaker and kept it short and precise. You're breaching the court's limits, he said, breath flat as iron. You're risking charges and you're risking a child, he added softly. Silence answered, then a click, then another number called back. I picked up on my line and let the trap work. Walk away from him and keep the pregnancy, a woman urged. That's your bargain, she continued, cool as a switchblade. I recorded the waveform pulse and didn't grant a word. Our attorney pinged with a plan that needed nerve. One call on a recorded bridge with the tech unit listening. He would ask her for a single clean admission. We both knew she liked to brag when cornered. The bridge connected with a soft tone and 3 voices. He spoke first and kept it clinical and lean. You tampered with brakes and staged a fake ultrasound, he said. Tell me why, he added and let the pause stretch. Her breath hit the line like gravel under tires. Because she's not fit to raise my son's legacy, she answered. You marry that problem and the name ends in mud, she finished. The tech message captured and my ribs loosened by an inch. He didn't shout and he didn't plead for her mercy. This is on record, he said and ended the call. I watched his face change shape from child to adult. Something closed and something opened and neither looked back. We drove straight to the station and filed the fresh clip. The sergeant listened once and paged a detective from upstairs. A warrant request moved through hands and screens like current. Within an hour, a team rolled toward her address. While they moved, we met our lawyer at the courthouse. She handed us affidavits and flagged the most lethal lines. Permanent stay away hearing this afternoon, she said, eyes calm and bright. I initialed every page and felt my legs stop shaking. In the corridor, a cousin blocked our path with faux concern. Family can fix this if you're reasonable, she murmured. I stepped close enough for her to see the recording icon. Walk, I said, and she peeled off like a shadow. Inside the courtroom, the clerk adjusted stacks with practiced economy. The judge entered and scanned the docket with minimal delay. Opposing counsel arrived alone and adjusted her jacket twice. My heart kept a slow, relentless beat that dared interruptions. The judge called our case and everyone stood as trained. Our lawyer summarized the overnight threats in clipped strokes. She cued the recorded call and let it run full. Those sentences hit like exposed wire in a flood. Opposing counsel requested a recess and found no generosity. Proceed, the judge ordered and glanced at the sergeant's affidavit. The affidavit described seized devices labeled with her cloud login. A camera feed from our parcel blinked in still frames. The judge turned to him with a narrow question. Do you fear additional harm to your partner and child? He asked. Yes, he answered with a voice I hadn't heard before. I fear escalation if boundaries are not enforced, he added. The ruling landed clean and final like a gavel through ice. Long-term restraints granted with immediate effect and wide radius. No contact dire. T or indirect and no digital reach. Violations to be treated as criminal with zero grace. We left the bench into a lobby full of watchers. Some filmed, some whispered, one ant-mouthed traitor and fled. He ignored them and guided me to the elevator without speech. The doors closed and I let one shake run out. Downstairs, our lawyer briefed media waiting near the steps. Safety first, wedding second, she told a microphone without names. I watched strangers nod like they understood the order of things. We have to choose the living before we choose the vows. At noon, the tech unit texted photos of confiscated tools. Pliers with residue that matched the wheel studs exactly. A phone backing up to a cloud with our address pinned. Chain of custody updated and shared to our drive. We met the venue manager in a side office by security. She slid over footage from yesterday's attempted cash pickup. On screen, his mother demanded refunds and threatened to smear. Thank you, I said and meant it like a lifesaver. He closed his eyes for 2 breaths, then opened them straight. I'm canceling the ceremony and planning nothing until the baby arrives, he said. I will draft a statement that protects you and doesn't feed gossip, he added. I nodded because clarity feels like oxygen when rooms get tight. We called the closest relatives who had stayed neutral and quiet. He spoke first and asked for space without negotiation or charm. Support us or step back, he told them and waited. 2 agreed with relief, 1 hung up mid-sentence without goodbye. Afternoon brought a court officer with an update from the warrant. Search complete and property secured for analysis and retention. A note on letterhead listed items taken from a home office. 3 devices, 2 logs, 1 notebook with coded initials. Our lawyer suggested a statement for social channels and vendors. Short, factual, no names, no emotion they could weaponize. I drafted 3 lines and he trimmed 1 adjective. We posted together and turned off comments like a fuse. He called the therapist and booked a session for himself alone. Accountability is mine, he said, and I watched his hands settle. He asked me to join after he did the groundwork. Maybe later, I said and kept my voice steady and kind. At dusk, a delivery arrived from the precinct with a receipt. They returned the camera parcel, now inert and gutted. I held its weight and felt a strange calm settle. This piece would not spy on us again. Dinner was functional and quiet and tasted like focus. We reviewed the schedule the lawyer had built for hearings. I packed a small hospital bag in case stress wrote other plans. Prepared is love when someone wants you shattered. Around 9, a final message slipped through from an unlisted address. A photograph of a staircase and a single typed line. Accidents still happen when no one watches. I forwarded it, then blocked the sender, then locked my jaw. He took the phone gently and placed it on the table. No more midnight checks, he said and pulled the curtains shut. We sleep and we show up tomorrow and the next day, he added. I breathed in that rhythm and found it held. Before bed, I stood by the window and tested my center. Fear was still present, but it didn't drive the car. Resolve sat heavier and asked fewer permissions to act. Growth sometimes sounds like a locked door in a quiet room. We climbed under thin hotel sheets and lay shoulder to shoulder. He whispered a promise to show up until it counted. Not flowery, not grand, only straight and repeatable. I let that promise rest beside the baby and me. Near midnight, the phone buzzed from the nightstand one last time. The precinct number, short and spare with no drama. Arrest made without incident, the officer reported, voice clipped and clear. Court date set for charges that would finally speak. I stared at the ceiling and felt something unclench. Not forgiveness, not revenge, just a switch flipping to safety. He turned toward me and exhaled into the dark like surrender. Tomorrow we would not be hunted in our own life. I whispered to the baby that danger would meet walls. Not words, not pity, just doors that resist and alarms that scream. We would build a home out of lines no one crosses. I closed my eyes and slept hard without dreaming.